Hi, I'm Freeholder Director Jerry Thornton. I want to thank everyone for being here on such a beautiful day. If all days were beautiful like today is, we wouldn't have to worry about having an emergency management conference here. But as you all know, and many of us here know, that's not always the case. So we always have to prepare for those things that are very threatening to the County of Cape May and its residents. Before we start, if everybody would please put their cell phones on vibrate, if you would please. And if everyone would just rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As all of you probably know, that September is National Preparedness Month, and the Board of Freeholders welcome all of you, and we're very happy and honored that we can hold this conference. And I'm really impressed with the amount of turnout we have year after year for this conference. And I'd just like to recognize a couple of people that are here today. We have our county prosecutor, Bob Taylor, is with us today. We have the chairman of the American Red Cross, Ron Francisini, here with us today. We're really fortunate to have our panelists here with us who have come a long distance and have spent a lot of time preparing for this meeting today. First of all, and then I'll call them up to speak, but we have Marty Pagliughi, who's our Emergency Management Coordinator, with us today. We have Edward Dickson, who's the Director of New Jersey Homeland Security, with us today. And we have Robert Van Fossen, Director of Emergency Management from the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. And we have Richard Shaw, Assistant Commissioner of Operations for New Jersey Department of Transportation. And a guy that's been with us for a long, long time, Captain Tom Scardino, who is the Executive Officer, New Jersey State Police Office of Emergency Management. And we're really happy that Dan Skelton, who's the meteorologist for TV 40, is with us today. And as we all know, when we have these storms in this crisis, this is the first guy we're looking at. And we keep praying, give us a better forecast. So we'll start off today with our first speaker, who will be Marty Pagliughi. And as many of you know, Marty has been the mayor of Avalon for more than 20 years, and he's been very proactive in emergency management. And he speaks today as just recently appointed as Cape May County's new coordinator of emergency management. So Marty.
Good morning, everyone. I didn't drive that far, I just came from Avalon, but thank you, Freeholder Director, for the introduction. And actually yesterday was my second month anniversary in the job. So naturally I'm staying in touch with Dan Skelton on his cell phone daily, because I said the first hurricane that comes this season, I'm going to Costa Rica. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm very proud to be able to represent the people of Cape May County in emergency management, and I want to thank the Freeholder Director and the rest of the Freeholder Board for having the confidence in letting me lead that initiative in the county. But I think one of the, being in the job for right in the middle of the hurricane season was a little challenging, and I think what my three priorities are going to be within the next 6-8 months. Of course, emergencies can happen anytime. We're in the middle of a peninsula which is prone primarily to hurricanes and northeast storms and storm surges. But we've also got a number of other issues that could take place as an emergency. You've got a blizzard that we had 3 years ago that taught everybody a lesson. We're in the middle of a northern part of the county's in the Pinelands district, which is susceptible to wildfires. People remember a few years ago when there was a major fire in Stafford Township where several homes were lost and people had to evacuate. But emergencies can come in any way, shape, or form. But I think my 3 priorities in the next 6 months are going to be, number one is going to be sheltering. We learned a lot of lessons from Hurricane Irene. Thank God it didn't hit us, thank God it went by, but I think I considered it a major training operation to find out where the pitfalls are and find out what we need to do a better job in. And like I said, my priorities in the next 8 months are going to be, number one is sheltering. And what people don't realize, I don't think we ever really paid much attention to, is how many people are we going to have to shelter? I don't think we really had a handle on it until this last evacuation. But it was kind of curious because in Avalon, we did a survey about 3 years ago. We sent out cards to find out exactly, do you have, how many people in your family, would you need a shelter? Do you need to be transported to the shelter? Do you have pets? The cards came back, and actually, it wasn't as many as we thought we were going to have to shelter. Last year in Irene, between Avalon and Stone Harbor, we had a bus contract, and we only actually had to use 1 bus. We only evacuated 42 people total in both towns. So I think what my priority is going to be is, number one, to try to get a count on the number of people that will actually need a shelter. And I'm going to be honest, we're going to concentrate on the senior citizens, and we're going to concentrate on the special needs people right off the bat. We've looked at, number one, we've identified possibly 5 shelters in the northern part of the county. But now we get into the logistics of those shelters. Number one, manpower. We're going to try to reinstitute the CERT teams in every one of the towns. We formed partnerships with the Medical Reserve Corps, thanks to Joan Rowland. We're going to be putting up training sessions this winter for different shelter operations and shelter volunteers. We've got a new partnership with the American Red Cross. The American Red Cross has a warehouse in Tinton Falls, New Jersey, North Jersey, and it was always that every time we would request equipment to come down from that, the politicians would start to grab it on the way, and by the time we got to Cape May County, there was nothing. So the new partnership is we're going to have the Red Cross stockpile some of their inventory right here in Cape May County. Actually, 2 weeks ago, we took delivery of 2,000 blankets on pallets, and we're storing them at the county warehouse. So that we're looking forward to expanding that partnership where the Red Cross will actually have resources in the north and in Cape May County that can be diverted to wherever they need them down here, whether it go to Cumberland, Atlantic, Salem County. The next issue is going to be transportation. From what we understand, there were problems with some of the non-nursing home facilities, some of the private institutions with senior citizens in Cape May and Wildwood last year. We're going to be working closer with each individual OEM coordinator in each municipality to try to get a better handle on transportation as far as signing memos of understanding and having contracts with bus companies ahead of time so that they can mobilize to these different pickup points in the individual towns. We're looking at the next issue is going to be auxiliary power, providing generator power for the shelters. That's going to be, we've got some innovative ways that we think we can get around the major capital investment of putting in actual generators. There's different ways we can look at approaching it. We can look at contracts with generator companies that if you call 24 hours in advance, they can deliver a 300 kV generator, provided the wiring, transfer switch, and the load center has been analyzed in those different shelters. That's one way where you're not putting up a couple $100,000 to buy generators. And last but not least, the pet issue. We've seen it firsthand. If anybody ever read the after action reports from Hurricane Katrina, there were hundreds of people who lost their life because they would not evacuate because they could not take their pets. There were, out of the 6 parishes that were affected the most in Hurricane Katrina, there were over 100,000 animals that were just let loose on the street or had to be rescued out of homes after the flooding. The emergency management was totally overwhelmed. And since then, the National Office of Emergency Management has putting a special emphasis on pet sheltering along with the general population because it's a matter of saving lives. We had a couple of incidents with the blizzard that we had senior citizens that were without electric for 2-3 days because they would not come to our shelter because they didn't think we took pets. We did take pets. And since then, the Borough of Avalon built a pet evacuation trailer that can actually hold 120 animals, which we will loan to the emergency management community, whether it be in Cumberland, Cape May, Atlantic County, depending on the issue. Since then, Cape May County Office of Emergency Management has received 2 pet evacuation trailers, not as big, but they will be stationed at the different pet-friendly shelters once we get our shelter plan in place. The other part of it is actually to keep track of the people that need to be sheltered, like I mentioned before. There was a program that was instituted, I guess about 5 or 6 years ago, called Register Ready. A state program, a state database, which really was not implemented the way it should have been over the years. We've got over 1,200 people have registered in the Register Ready program, but that database is in Trenton. It's not doing any good sitting up in Trenton. We're looking at expanding that database down to the local Office of Emergency Management, hoping to work with the County Health Department and Human Services, and also put the database in each individual municipality so that the OEM coordinators of that municipality are really responsible for their population. They will update and keep track of that database. We're going to revamp that program hopefully within the next 2 or 3 months. We've got people who actually wrote the software for that Register Ready program coming down to have a meeting to show us how we can expand that into the different municipalities. And the third initiative that I'm looking at right now is some of the new technology that we'd like to embrace into the emergency management community in Cape May County. Number one, people see there's a new website. It's called Ready Cape May County. That's going to be an informational website that's going to be able to show you how to prepare for different emergencies, what to look for, where to go for information. It's an informational type of website. We're also looking at creating an emergency Cape May County website, which will be instantaneous posting of weather alerts, emergency information. It will be tied in, hopefully, in the long run with a reverse 911 system that would be county-wide, kind of like a Global Connect. Quite a few of the municipalities already are using the Global Connect system, reverse 911. It can be programmed to go to specific groups, whether we're going to send out messages to the barrier islands that are in flood-prone areas or any other disaster that could happen in other parts of the county. There's some of the technologies, plus we're also just did a test the other day on a video conferencing system that will be a network of video conferencing throughout the county, whether it be the local OEM offices or the different public safety community offices, the police stations. Instead of trying to round people up to come to the EOC and courthouse, video conferencing can be done within an hour if we can call people into it. And we're also looking at some phone applications that would be tied into the Global Connect that people can get warnings on their cell phone. Instantaneous warnings tied in with the emergency Cape May County website. And all of the websites will be interlocked back to the county website, the Ready or the emergency website. But it's a pretty big challenge, and I'm looking forward to it, actually. And I think that what people have to realize is emergency management is actually an investment in the municipality. It's an investment in Cape May County. It's going to make people feel comfortable. It's going to make our visitors and tourists feel comfortable, that they know that there's people watching in case there's an emergency. I had the honor of receiving an updated bond rating by the Borough of Avalon about 3 weeks ago. We're AAA bond rated. We're the only barrier island to receive that high of a bond rating. And what that meant to the Borough of Avalon is we're saving about $240,000 a year in interest charges on our bonds. And the only reason we got it was because of our emergency management program in the last 15 years. No other barrier island, and that was always the excuse because you're in a flood zone, you're in a hazardous area, the whole 9 yards. But when you started to put the floodplain management plan together, the OEM plans together, put it into Moody's, they looked at that, and that's the only thing that gave us our upgraded bond rating. So like I said, emergency management is not an expense to the county. We feel it's an investment in the county. And I want to personally thank the support that I've gotten in the last 2 months from the various agencies, the prosecutor's office, the sheriff's office, and especially the freeholders. And I'm looking forward to serving you. And Mr. Director, am I out of time yet? I don't know if they gave me the, I'm not getting the wave over there.
You got 35 seconds left.
35 seconds. Well, let me get into the, no, I'm just, ladies and gentlemen, are there any questions? Yes, sir.
During the Hurricane Irene, we were talking to Freeholder Thornton. The electricity wanted to shut off all electricity to the islands. You heard that before.
Hi, Rob.
Some people were going crazy over
Well,
that would cut your communications.
Exactly. We caught wind of that in our EOC, and I think there was a little bit of a discussion that went all the way up the ladder all the way to the governor's office. And since then, there's been some drills and there's been some management conferences with Atlantic Electric. The issue is that if we do get a tidal surge, some of the major substations, if they go underwater,
right,
and they're active, if they're live, you're looking at a year to replace them. If they could be shut off ahead of time, they could be replaced in probably a couple of weeks just to be able to redo the equipment. So, I mean, it would be devastating to be without those substations. But what Atlantic Electric has partnered with us now is that there's going to be a warning time that we will know ahead of time if the potential to shut off a particular zone or a particular grid on a barrier island. So at least we're going to have advanced warning. And going back to the local OEM, if they know where their people are, they're going to be able to take action for it.
I know from, well, I was around with a 62 storm. The water would get so high into the outlets of the homes and set fires. They had fires all over the place because they didn't pull their circuit breakers or what. And the fire companies couldn't get to it. The houses just burned right down to the ground.
Yep, absolutely. I've got a lot of pictures.
Some people would have leave their home.
Yeah, I think the more critical thing is to warn us ahead of time, warn the individual municipalities ahead of time that the electric will be shut off, because it's, the other part of it is you're not going to have everybody evacuate. We already know that. That's where the danger is going to come in. And by the local OEM office knowing exactly who's where and who did not evacuate and keeping track of their senior citizens and their special needs people, they'll be able to take action before the power is actually shut off.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Kathy Bredzen. I'm here in the capacity of public adjuster. I was working days prior to at the when people were evacuating at the ferry, Cape May Lewis Ferry. I left there at 8 o'clock at night, and the lines at the gas stations, there were fist fights. Is there any way you can alleviate the problem with the extremely long lines at all the area gas stations? They're running out of gas, and like I said, people were actually fist fighting. We're going to be talking to the Carriers Association, and also in conjunction with that, one of the issues we're talking with once we establish these shelters is going to be food distribution, which the first people that came to mind is Wawa Corporation. With the Wawa gas stations and a lot of the independent gas stations that are in the county, we're looking at giving them a warning ahead of time that there's a possibility of a couple of fuel oil companies like Carluzzo Fuel. There's 2 or 3 of them in the Cumberland County area. They may station fuel trucks in Cape May County before an anticipated evacuation. So yes, that was an issue all over the county. I know, for example, I've got one gas station in Avalon. The cars were lined up for 14 blocks, and he just kept pumping fuel till 1 o'clock in the morning on Thursday night until he ran out. But we're looking at the Fuel Carriers Association to possibly have be included in the county emergency plan to pre-position some tanker trucks down here in the event of an evacuation. Good point, Kathy. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. This is Naylor from Tacomo Township. We were out with an inspection bill, but it's causing most of the damage and most of the outages. And with some of the foreign crude that you brought in to help finally, we're appalled. They said, we never get away with this up in Vermont or wherever, North Jersey or whatever. There has to be some improvement on this.
Yes, you're
Right, and I can assure you that the governor has taken special notice of that. Especially, we were spared in Hurricane Irene, but from the northwestern part of New Jersey, the major power companies had problems. And the governor did put in a task force who has been meeting now for a year. Their findings have been conveyed to the different power companies, not just Atlantic Electric, Public Service, Gas and Electric, the different power companies. There's been some discussion back and forth with the Public Utilities Commission of looking at what capital improvements and maintenance are the electric companies going to be taking when they go in for a rate case. If they go in for a rate case asking for a rate increase, they're going to say, well, okay, we'll consider your 5–10% rate increase, but how much of that is going to go to capital investment back into your infrastructure? I think those discussions are taking place because we saw it during the blizzard in Cape May County. I mean, the barrier islands, majority of the barrier islands were out of power for 5 to 7 days, and it was some antiquated old infrastructure that should have been replaced years ago. So,
Branches are real. I mean,
and
they're just smacking them in the
right after the storm that went through Atlantic County, you're absolutely right. There was a lot of areas that were not trimmed, but I think the State Office of Emergency Management, through the governor's office, has been in touch with the power companies, and I know they are anticipating making major improvements.
Thanks, Marty. Okay, thank you. And after we go through all the speakers, if there's more questions at that time, we'll entertain questions, but we do have to move along here. And before we go any further, I'd like to recognize our county sheriff, Gary Schaefer, who came in. And now we're very happy. Our next speaker will be Edward Dickson, who's the Director of the Office of Homeland Security. And welcome aboard, Mr. Director.
I went through the time and effort of preparing some remarks, and I didn't know anyone had leaked my remarks to the new OEM coordinator, because I can just sit down, because Marty just went through my my whole spiel here. But good morning. My name is Ed Dickson, and I serve as Director of New Jersey's Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness. I'd like to thank you all for attending this morning, as well as Gerald Thornton, the Freeholder Director, and the entire Board of Freeholders for the opportunity to be here. Very quickly, my background: retired FBI, 25 years, 3 years in the private sector in New York at the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation, and about 7 months here in the state of New Jersey as a director. And these 7 months feel like about 7 years in this short time. I've been in this role since March, and I'm very happy, very proud to be back in New Jersey. This morning, I'll provide comments on what my office does, with a few examples of some of our recent initiatives and how we value the public in our efforts. Since the focus of this conference is preparedness, and being as September is National Preparedness Month, I will focus more on the preparedness side, but we'll have a couple comments about our counterterrorism measures. So about OHS&P, my office. As the name suggests, we have two very critical missions: counterterrorism and preparedness. Given these vital missions, our portfolio is expansive, yet at the same time, our focus is singular. Each day we work to better protect the people and property here in New Jersey. We work very closely with law enforcement and emergency management agencies up and down and across the state. In fact, we leverage outstanding partnerships and working relationships throughout all levels of government and in the private sector in order to complete this mission. So, during 2011, Hurricane Irene, this heightened our awareness of our ability to effectively shelter evacuees during a hurricane if and when local and county capacities and capabilities are overwhelmed. So it became clear that work was necessary to build that capacity to develop evacuation plans, stockpile commodities, and formulate logistic plans to support the state during a catastrophic event. Our planning bureau within OHS&P, in collaboration with state and local officials, have identified possible shelter sites and have inspected these sites to ensure compliance with the American Red Cross. Within a year since Irene, we've identified 18 shelters within the state, and we can now support a capacity of between 7,000 and 9,000 people, and are building towards supporting a capacity of about 15,000. We built a stockpile of commodities to support the state-supported shelter system for a period of 3 days, which is a huge improvement over last year. We've implemented a tracking system so we can find grandma, okay, or anybody else that gets registered and gets put into one of our shelters. We'll be able to track that person and know where he or she is at any point during the evacuation and sheltering process. And we've also increased our training and staffing to support these efforts. Another initiative resulting from Irene is the establishment of a private sector desk at the state's Emergency Operations Center, which is at the Rock in West Trenton. During Irene, OHS&P staff members were integrated into the EOC to assist with resource requests from counties and shelter facilities. From that perspective, the private sector desk was initiated. The private sector desk will be activated during any major event and will serve as a single point of contact for critical sectors so they may communicate directly with personnel from various state, federal, and local agencies in real time. The private sector desk will be up and running before, during, and after an event and will serve as an integral role in the resolution of post-event emergency issues affecting critical sectors, such as restoring power, reopening of roadways, and getting businesses back up and running. And just like any emergency, will have a multiple effect on public and private sectors. It also impacts multiple areas. Emergencies do not respect geographical, political, or cultural boundaries. An emergency will have an effect on all of us in some direct or indirect way. So incidents that occur in other parts of the state or other parts of the country or even other parts of the world can have a tremendous impact here in New Jersey. So as a result, we have embraced the idea of regional planning. So the state's 21 counties are divided up into 4 preparedness regions. The UASI region, which is the 7 contiguous counties that surround Jersey City and Newark, the Northwest region, the Delaware River region, and the Shore region here. Cape May County is in the Shore region with Atlantic, Monmouth, and Ocean counties. Each region established a regional working group that included representatives of each counties in the region, as well as representatives of key organizations involved in emergency preparedness and response. So here in Cape May, you have Marty, you have the county prosecutor, Bob Taylor, that head or part of that committee, and they identify your needs, your training, your preparedness efforts, and they send that up to the regional county group for deliberation and decision making on those requests. This regional alignment results in a more effective way to shelter, to address commodity distribution, plans for each locality, as well as update county emergency operations plans. And it really helps better us manage our statewide responsibilities. So as I alluded to a few minutes ago, while it's true that much of New Jersey's risk is in the northern part of the state, those 7 counties that surround Newark and Jersey City, with its high population, mass transit, critical infrastructure, we recognize the needs of this important region here in the South and have made investments accordingly. So even though the bulk of the federal dollars flow to the north, because of our effective grant management practices, we have been able to provide direct funding to all 21 counties, to include South Jersey. The population here in South Jersey is approximately 1.5 million people. That's almost 20% of the state's total population. Roughly a quarter of that 1.5 million people live in Cape May and Atlantic counties. And these figures don't include the tourists that come here during the summer season. So just by following the numbers, we recognize the significance of the South Jersey Shore region. So since the creation of OHS&P in 2005-2006, the 4 Shore County regions here have been awarded more than $17 million in federal Homeland Security funds. These funds go directly to each county to support county-identified initiatives and improvements to law enforcement and emergency preparedness activities at the local level. More than half of that $17 million, about $9 million, have been awarded to South Jersey, to specifically Atlantic and Cape May counties. So where has that money gone? Funds have been used here in Cape May County to purchase emergency generators, provide radio equipment for first responders, and for a variety of law enforcement and emergency management training programs. In addition, federal funds have been invested to the establishment of mutual link system, and that's designed to enhance the safety and security of the hotels in the tourist area in Atlantic City. So these funds and other types of investments enable us to better protect the critical infrastructure in this region. So by effectively managing federal dollars and strategically investing our state funds, we are able to significantly enhance the disaster preparedness and emergency response capabilities here in the South, and we will continue to make those investments. As Marty mentioned a couple of minutes ago, public messaging is so important. So the public knows what to expect from the state in terms of the services that we can provide and we're prepared to provide. But the public also needs to understand what's expected of them during an emergency. You know, where to go, how to prepare, what to bring. And that will obviously make our preparedness efforts flow and be that much more effective. So while the residents of this region should be proud of the work being done by their local elected and appointed government leaders, the fact that we're here today having this conversation is a true testament of this commitment. The stark reality is that in government, in law enforcement, and emergency management, we can't do this alone. And clearly, hurricane preparedness is a critical component of our emergency preparedness efforts. Last summer, you experienced firsthand the damage and the destruction caused by Hurricane Irene and Tropical Storm Lee. So despite this destruction, these events provided us with an opportunity to redouble our efforts to be prepared and to be resilient, which is one of the reasons we have gathered here today. We are committed to reminding residents, businesses, and visitors to be prepared for any type of emergency, whether it's man-made or a natural disaster. Thus, my office has increased its public messaging efforts to better engage the public. During the summer months, we partnered with the State Office of Emergency Management in broadcast radio advertisements, encouraging individuals in community preparedness. The state's one-stop shopping for preparedness information, which is located at www.ready.newjersey.gov. Again, that's www.ready.newjersey.gov is a great source of information. Last week, you may have heard radio PSAs in which I encourage residents to support suspicious activity to law enforcement whenever and wherever they see it. We have invested funds to make that much easier. So by calling 211, the 24-hour toll-free telephone line, the public can report suspicious activity to trained law enforcement personnel operating our terrorism tip line. And the point of this campaign is very simple. If you see something, say something. You really can't get much more basic than that. If you see something, say something. Unattended packages, suspicious people in places where they shouldn't be, suspicious vehicles, see something, say something. Additionally, we continue to explore new ways to communicate our message to the public in both traditional outlets such as media, advertisements, and billboards, as well as through new media to include social media outlets. So in conclusion, let me again thank the Freeholders for organizing and hosting today's gathering. I think this type of effort is so important because it allows community involvement, community feedback. It allows you to ask questions, directly to your elected officials and to the decision makers and those that hold these offices and responsibilities. Their leadership serves as a model for the rest of the state when it comes to encouraging better and greater local coordination and enhancing public awareness. I will tell you in my 7 months here on the job about the high level of cooperation, coordination among the state agencies here in New Jersey. Okay, from DOT to Department of Health, Department of Human Services, the New Jersey State Police Office of Emergency Management. All of these agencies take this responsibility very, very seriously. Irene was a tremendous challenge in 2011 that we turned into a great opportunity to identify gaps and weaknesses in not only what we do, but more importantly, how we do it. And that sheltering piece, the commodities, the evacuation, the tracking system, all of that points to significant progress in terms of where we were a year ago to where we are now. And the coordination that we're going to have from the county prosecutor to your new OEM county coordinator here, Marty, the coordination that we have with Tom Scardino and Lieutenant Colonel Jerome Hatfield with the State Police OEM, that's a good place for us to be in right now. So we're preparing for another Irene, a severe tropical storm, possibly a Category 1. And that's our goal for this year. But as one of the questioners mentioned, we just had a severe storm back in late June, early July that caused just as much damage as Irene. So our hope is that while we prepare out for the big one, we become very, very tight, okay? We become very, very focused on our efforts to make sure that we can address those smaller middle storms that were more likely to happen than a big Cat 1 or Cat 2 that comes up the coast. And I think we're in a good place today as a state in terms of our preparedness efforts. And that goes a lot to the partnerships and the working relationships that my office, State Police OEM, have with the other agencies at a state level, and the focus that we're getting from the county level. So I think with Marty here, with the county prosecutor, obviously with the Board of Freeholders' support, that's going to better put Cape May in a good position. So I'm here for the rest of the conference. I'll look forward to any questions that you may have. And Mr. Thornton, thank you for the opportunity to be here. And if there's anything I can do from my office to support Cape May's efforts in terms of preparedness or any type of other preparedness efforts, please let me know.
Thank you, Mr. Director.
Thank you.